Welcome to Uncorked, Wine, Business, and Life with Bill Green. I'm Jerrold Colton, and we are at Saddlehill Winery in Voorhees, New Jersey. And as usual, we have a great guest for you today, and it's a guy who is, of course, a good friend of Bill Green's and of mine as well, a person who's really, really entrenched and well-known throughout the Philadelphia and South Jersey community in a whole lot of interesting endeavors. So, Bill, why don't you introduce today's guest?
Yeah, this is really a special one for me, my good friend Jeff Brown, and it goes back a lot of years, but it's actually a little bit creepy. Because we lived in Voorhees, right? And then I moved to Cherry Hill. And the next thing I know, he literally moves like 5 doors away in Cherry Hill. Then I moved to Philadelphia. He literally moves across the street. Then I had already had a house down the shore, and he moves down the shore. But anyway, it's my pleasure and my honor to welcome you on Uncorked, and we've been friends for 30 years?
A long time.
And we have a lot of mutual interests. I think the family values and a lot of other things that you and I share. Our wives are great friends. But, you know, you and I talk a lot of business, but it's more than just business. You go all in. Your resume is so impressive. 37 years in the grocery business, taking over a much smaller family business, building it. You're on a lot of boards. You've done some great things in your community, and we're going to talk about all that today. One of the things that I really love when I hear about when Governor Wolf appointed you on the board of the workforce development of the state of Pennsylvania, and that's just awesome. But it's just one thing that you do of dozens to be involved in your community, to give back, because you've been so blessed like many of us as well. So, Jeff, welcome to Uncorked, and here you are.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Bill. And I'd like your taste in real estate. I think you're way ahead of seeing where the action is, and so I just delegate that to you, and I just follow you wherever you go.
It's pretty easy, right?
It's easy, right?
You know, being in the real estate, if we're talking about real estate, it was funny how I never got a commission. And that's something you don't give much commission.
Yeah, I'm not big on commission.
You're not big on commission.
but just to say, you were not stalking him. It was
I do like Amy. I might be stalking Amy, but not Bill.
It's funny because in this community, there is another Jeff Brown who we're close with. We had his brother Sid on as a guest, and there's another Sandy Brown who's married to Sid, and you're married to the lovely Sandy. So you have a name that carries a lot of weight in more ways than one. So.
Well, he's supermarket Jeff Brown.
Yeah, grocery.
Yeah,
grocery.
really.
I'm the grocery Jeff. They're trucking Brown.
Hey, Jeff, go back. You grow up in Northeast Philadelphia. You go to Babson. Go back to the early years and, you know, how you get started in the grocery business with your dad and kind of like all the stuff happens that makes you pivot.
So my dad, old-time grocer. His dad, old-time. He was a third-generation grocer. And, you know, the old-time way was you wake up like 4 in the morning, you go to the market, you buy the stuff, you go to the store, you run the store. You're literally there every hour the store's open. And, you know, he's home like 9 o'clock at night, and that's his routine 7 days a week. And so if I wanted to see my dad, I had to wait up for him to come home. And then I would sit with him. He would have dinner like 9:30 or something. I'd sit with him, and he would tell me the blow-by-blow of everything he did that day. And I was mesmerized by it. How he did things that seemed like they were risky or let's say the average person wouldn't do, and his love for his customers, his employees, big imprint on my life. And of course, by the time I was 8, only way I could see him is I go to work with him. So on the weekends, I would go to work with him. At 8 years old, in an inner city store that some of the employees carried weapons because of the crime level.
Where was it?
It was in West Philly at 40th and Jerrold.
No, well.
And so he would take me there, and, you know, my dad, windows down, unlocked doors, kissing and hugging everyone, never had a problem. Well, a couple problems, but not bad. And he would leave me by myself to work, and the workers would teach me the business. And oddly enough, even though we were way different, coming from different lifestyles and different neighborhoods, they had a fondness for me. They took me under their wing, and all the different workers looked forward to having time to teach me what they did. And that's how I learned the business and fell in love with really the people. I love business. It doesn't have to be the grocery business, but I really, really love the people. And when you look at the work I do and the philanthropic work I do, it all centers around how I could use what I'm good at to help them do better.
Bill, I want to get into all that philosophy with Jeff, but you are fourth generation. So your father was already third generation. How did it all get started?
So my great-grandfather from Russia and my grandfather from Poland came, and my grandfather couldn't find a job because he didn't speak good English. And he struggled, and a little racism maybe. They didn't want him. And so my great-grandfather and grandfather opened a little small grocery store at 3rd in Oregon because they could get it cheap. The whole thing about immigrants and inner city locations, you could get in, your startup costs are low. The real estate's inexpensive, and you could buy, let's say, a failed store and get in pretty cheap. And that's how a lot of people made their living. And in that generation, it didn't go past that. It was really my dad, who was more of an innovator, who, by the way, they started taking him to work at 8 years old in their little inner city store, 32nd and Burke, also quite a neighborhood. And the same deal, they left him by himself to learn the business. And he was telling them that the chain stores have bigger stores and they have more offerings and they have self-service offerings and, all the different things that were modern at that time. And he modernized the family business. And, in my generation, I did start out working for my dad. He had shopping bags. And it was clear to me that was not going to be a long-term business, that ShopRite was on the horizon of coming to this market. And I felt there was just no way that we could compete with them. And it actually ended up that my dad, I right after college, I was his CFO for about 2 years. We actually sold the business and my dad retired. So my business is actually a startup. I mean, my dad taught me what I knew, but it was a startup, which, is a very interesting story because I'm 23 years old. I have no job because my dad sold the business that I worked for. And, I meet Sandy. So she's going out with an unemployed dude. And I go to Wakefern, and like the youngest person I meet with's in their 70s, and I'm 23 years old. And I told them I thought I'd be of value to them as an entrepreneur to bring their grocery stores to Philadelphia. And they just stared at me. And what's your net worth? Like practically nothing. And how old are you? 23 years old. And we ended up working it out. And they gave me a chance. So that's...
Yeah, so talk about how that first thing happened and explain for our listeners and our viewers kind of the Wakefern model. Because people don't really realize, I own all these supermarkets, but it's a cooperative and...
Yeah, so when you hear cooperatives, you think about the first thing that comes to mind to me is farming cooperatives, where a bunch of little farmers get together and they build processing plants and distribution businesses to sell their products and to get more than if they relied on a third party. And the grocery industry at one time did it as a way to defend themselves against the giant retailers of their time. When Wakefern started, there were a bunch of little North Jersey operators with small stores. And at that time, A&P had a monopoly in the grocery business. And A&P's retail price was lower than their wholesale price. And so the little guys got together and used to take trucks into one of their garages and split up the order to try to get their costs down. And they finally formalized it and started a co-op. So what's unusual about this business model, especially in the consolidation and M&A and global systems and all that, these are still a bunch of family businesses. They're all family businesses. And we still do everything together. We essentially run this business, unfortunately, through committees of family businesses and argue over what would be best for our individual customers and our individual families. And the business runs that way. And this year, Wakefern Co-op will do about $22 billion in revenues at a retail level.
Amongst how many stores?
I would about 300 stores.
And all over the country.
No, in the Northeast, Mid-Atlantic region, about 9-10 states.
But given the fact that we have a Cherry Hill shop, right? Actually, right across the street here, and you have an inner city store, the models and the merchandising is much different. How does that work in those Wakefern boardrooms when you really have to thread that needle? It's be good for you and good for me, but
yeah, that's where the fighting comes in.
right.
But what's interesting, if you look at our competitors that don't fight, There's a CEO and he lays down the law and it is what it is. And people like that leave out people because there's no one fighting for them. Like my lower income inner city customers in a big corporation would have no one defending them. And so I'm there. If they want to do something that's not good for my customers, I will fight for them because what's good for my customers is good for my business. And that's what happens times 45 different families. And there's a lot of debate, let's put it that way.
And then, but there is, even though the purchasing part of your business is basically handled by Wakefern. I mean, they cut deals. You could still deviate and be entrepreneurial and go outside to what, like 2 or 3% of your overall purchases can be outside of?
Yes. So Wakefern, our shareholders agreement requires 85% of everything we buy be through Wakefern. And the other 15% is to be a good entrepreneur, to be a server of your customers. And in my case, if I'm in West Philly, North Philly, that's not only diverse, but diverse from people all over the world, because immigrants from all over the world go to places like Philadelphia. And I have, a big Muslim customer base. I have Western Africans. I have Jamaicans, people from all over. And if I'm a good entrepreneur, I will get to know them and know what they eat, what they celebrate, what their religion is, and operate my business and merchandise my store to serve them. And that's exactly what I've done.
As we continue on this path, part of our show, of course, is wine. As we sit here at Saddlehill Winery, this seems like, is wine or liquor part of those things you go outside your 85% on?
Yes, we have 19 stores. Almost all the stores have liquor licenses, and just like every other product, we merchandise the store for the neighborhood, and wine is definitely part of what we do.
So it's a good time to introduce our first wine.
Our first wine. We always start with this wine. This is the Saddlehill. Since we're here at Saddlehill, this is a Vintner's Reserve. It's a Bordeaux blend. It's kind of
the one that's on the outside, right?
Yeah, that's your first one. Yeah. Okay. So, cheers, Jeff. Thanks.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
It's good.
Isn't that nice, right?
Yeah, it has a complexity to it that I didn't expect.
And Jeff, I mean, it's really interesting because, of course, this is a Jersey wine that Bill produces right here, and that's pretty competitive with a whole lot of other stuff and things you'll get out of Napa. And we're very proud of you.
Yeah, I mean, what I say to people, I mean, this one is a more expensive wine. We retail this at $56, but if you go into a wine shop, a liquor store, and you go $35 a bottle of wine, the Jersey wines and the Napa wines are going to be the same. Jersey can't make $100 bottle. We're pushing the limits. Some of these grapes come from the West Coast that we blend in with our grapes to enhance it. You can call wine Jersey wine if 75% of the grapes are from New Jersey. But speaking of percentages, I want to dig down a little bit. The 15% that you don't have to buy from Wakefern, are your margins better? Or is it more of accommodation product?
Yeah, it varies. And I'll give you an interesting example. So maybe it's 20 years ago, I'm in one of my stores in Northwest Philadelphia, and it's predominantly an African-American store. And we have maybe 15, 20% are African-American Muslims. And so I'm asking my team that the ladies in the head coverings are not buying our meat. Do we know why? Now, I was completely uninformed at that time. And they're like, we don't know why. And nobody thought to ask why. Let's go ask why. So we went up to one of our customers and we asked them, is there something wrong with our meats? And she explains that I'm Muslim and I follow our rules and I have to keep halal, and your meat's not certified halal. I can't buy it from you. And I'm like, well, how can I learn about this? And I want to serve you better. And she introduced me to her imam, like in Judaism would be our rabbi. And my team and I went to meet with the imam, and we had a little chat, and they educated us a little. We broke out a Quran and read it and to understand it. And then he said, if you want to have a broader business model serving Muslims, he didn't say it quite like this, there's a hierarchy, and I'm a low on the totem pole, so you got to meet our mir. And so I followed up with a meeting on Osage Avenue in West Philadelphia. It's where they burnt down 2 blocks during the move bombing. And it's pretty rough there. And I took my team there, and the guy who drove, He was afraid to get out of the car. He wasn't used to Philly like I am. I had to drag him out of the car. And we sat down with maybe a half a dozen imams and the emir, and we ended up working out a citywide halal program.
Wow.
It was a very interesting thing. And that's the difference between what I do and a big chain. Mm-hmm. No large corporate CEO would get into the weeds. And you know what? It's very similar to when Bill announced one day he's buying this land and he's going to have a farm and put a winery there. And someone said to me, does he really know anything about that? Will it be successful? I go, you don't know this guy. This guy will dig into the details. He will know everything about it. He will push the limits. If he fails at first, he'll just keep on coming back. That's him. It doesn't matter what the business is.
Hey, Jeff, one of the things that you really, I talk about entrepreneurial risk all the time. All the Acmes of the world and AMPs were leaving, and you're building new stores in cities. You were acknowledged at one of Barack Obama's State of the Union address. You actually sat with Michelle Obama, and the reason was because you were in the inner city, and they were so impressed with what you did, and you had a chance to meet them. Talk about that experience,
Jeff, that's incredible.
Shit.
I mean, that's just incredible to be recognized by the president, by the first lady, and brought to
because of the supermarket, right? Like things we take for granted,
and shows so much more what you do than just sell food. And it is the most, to me, was one of the most amazing compliments someone could receive.
Yeah, it was a pretty interesting experience, especially its recognition for, like a thing I was dedicated to beyond belief. That's hard. But it really started, and people don't really know this story. It started, I don't know if you remember, but there was a debate in Philadelphia between Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. This was in the primary. And a couple days early, Barack Obama.
This is the 2008 election.
Yes.
Right, you're great.
So Barack Obama was in Philadelphia, and our business is unionized. And so he went to the unions and he said that I want to see some things that are important for me to see in Philadelphia while I'm here, and I want to see the ones that the unions like. And the union's like, there's only one guy to see. You got to see this guy's stores because I don't think there's anything like it anywhere in the country. So I get a call and I'm out of town. And they're like, I know it's short notice, but a guy running for president, Barack Obama, he wants to see your stores. This is the president of the union.
Were you familiar with Barack Obama's name at that point? Because he was not that well known.
Well, he wasn't that well known, but I knew a debate was coming up between him and Hillary. And my union said, can you get here? And I'm like, I can't get there. It's physically impossible. It's too short a notice. But be my guest. We have a trusting relationship. Give him a tour of the store, explain what we do. It was a food desert store. The early iteration of it. And so he went in and he's shocked because if you go to Chicago, where he's from, there is nothing like this. And if you go really all through the country, there is no solution that has worked. And he's like, I don't understand how this guy makes it work and no one else can make it work. I would like to meet this guy. And I have this debate coming up and I'd like an advisor on food issues. Could he advise me? And I'm like, I don't know if I could be helpful, but if you want to talk, that's fine. And so his people said, you know what Barack Obama was concerned about? I know no one would remember this, but bread was very expensive then because wheat was very expensive. And if you're a student of history, high wheat prices have also toppled governments because it's a fundamental item of people's diets around the world. And he was worried about that because he's an intellectual and he reads history, and he was worried, is there a U.S. problem that I need to be briefed on? And so I did brief him, and I told them that unlike other civilizations, this is supply and demand, capitalist society, and you would be amazed how quickly this system fixes problems like that. And I think if you let it alone, you'll see within 6 months it all falls into line. Because the cycle time of growing wheat is quick, and you have major companies with a lot of capital. And when the price gets high, they'll invest more capital. This problem will be fixed like before you're president. And he goes, so you don't think I need to be informed in any other way? I go, I don't think this is going to be like history. I think you're okay. And of course, it never came up in the debate. And he becomes the president. And as soon as he's president, a mutual political person that we both trust, Dwight Evans, he calls him up and he goes, that guy from Philadelphia, I'd like to meet with that guy.
And he's just so the listeners know, that's a representative, one of the Philly reps, right?
He originally was a Pennsylvania representative, but he was chairman of appropriations. So he was very popular. Of course, later he became a congressman. And so Dwight calls me up, Representative Evans, and he says, the president wants to meet with you and talk about food deserts. And I'm like, why? He said, because he's fascinated by the fact that you make this work and others don't. And he just wants to understand if there's a broader policy he should be thinking about. And so we take the train down to DC and we meet there with like 50 representatives of his new administration, because they're not sure which part of the government would be involved in doing this if they're going to do something. And it was a really intense thing where they're grilling me and asking questions, asking my opinion about if we wanted to do a national food desert policy, what would it look like? What would you suggest? How could we do it? Based on what you learned, what could the government do differently to make this a success? And so Dwight Evans said, have you thought about leadership? Because leadership's important. I think we should start out with who's the leader. And the answer of the president's representative said, well, Barack Obama loves what he saw in Philadelphia, and he's thinking he should be the leader. And I chimed in and I said, I'm not sure that's the right way to go.
Modestly, or because it sounded awesome, like an awesome task?
Yeah, it would probably be better for me if I went that way. But I'm like, the Republicans hate you, right? That means they're going to hate whatever you do. You're setting this up for a fight. Let's make it easy on all of us. Make it your wife's legacy. She had just planted the garden, and it fits in. It's about health outcomes of children. And I think this would be a great legacy to have because it's one of the country's biggest problems. And so his representatives say, so you want me to go back to the president of the United States, the most powerful person in the world, and say, Jeff Brown, the grocer, thinks you're not right for the job. He wants to pick someone else. And I'm like, yeah, essentially, yeah. And they go, all right, what else? And we dug into what I learned from doing this work. Detailed stuff about policy, new market tax credits and how they could be more potent, and agriculture, what changes they could make. And I had a long list of things that they were impressed with. And they were on me for 6 months, every day calling me about the idea you have. There's a problem with it. And they would start informing me on the formation of the country and the formation of how the government is organized and what underlying rules exist that would prevent them from doing things exactly the way I said. Is there an alternative way to do it? And we spent that 6 months going through all the various policy problems, which really was quite an education in federal government policy. If I can't go left, can I go right? Or how could I circumvent it? Or what other department of the government? If I could tell you an interesting example, the agriculture department lends money or gives money to farmers. They also have the food stamp program, or now called SNAP. It's quite a large function of the government. And you can borrow money from them. And the way that they do it is they have field offices in agricultural areas. And the farmer goes, it explains they need 2 tractors and it's $125,000. And this is how he's going to pay them back. And they're used to dealing with all farmers. So we felt that agriculture should be involved, but like urban pockets don't fit into that. Like there's no even offices in her. So they're like, we don't know how we could do it through agriculture because it's not how it's structured. And some of the things just were not permitted. They were just outright not permitted. And we crafted what became the Let's Move campaign for Michelle Obama, which was her legacy. And so, she was focused on childhood obesity, but it fit into what I was trying to do. And her thinking was school lunches, childhood nutrition education. But really this fit in because if you can't get access to fresh food, you can't do any of the things. And it became the Let's Move campaign. And when it came time to sell it to the Republicans, they remembered what I said. So they hold me to task. And I got a call from a nonprofit leader that said, the president charged us with being your support to go to the Republicans. And so they hired a lobbying firm. They were good with Republicans. They're like, we want you to go meet with the Republicans and we want you to sell them on this policy and smooth the way for them to be agreeable to it, which I did. And I met with the head of the Republican Agriculture Committee, and this is really interesting. And I laid out how we're going to use the free enterprise system to solve social problems without subsidizing people and without taking away their incentive to work. And he's literally jumping up and down in his chair. What, did you drug the president? There's no way he's going to be for a policy like this. Is a Republican policy. This is what conservatives do. And I'm like, I'm not going by that. I'm going by, this is the only way this problem gets solved. He goes, we agree with you. Tell us how we can help. And you didn't hear one fight in the media about this. It sailed through and we got the whole policy improved.
And being a Democrat yourself, and we'll talk about your political, is kind of classic, right? Obama wanted to throw money at the problem, which has to come from taxpayer dollars. And you came up with a solution that was helping not only the people without government money, but making them better people and improving the community, which is why Governor Wolf, who you, thank you very much, introduced me to, put you on the Workforce Development Board. Talk about that for the state of Pennsylvania, because that was a lot of time, and you spent a lot with that.
Yeah. So Governor Wolf, who's a very educated guy, I think he has a PhD from MIT, which probably should exclude him from public service. He's just too educated and a lovely human being, just a really good-hearted person. He went to Dwight Evans and he said, show me what I should see in Philly. And he goes, you got to meet Jeff. And we meet. And if you ask me to assess with my knowledge of politics whether this guy has a chance to become a governor, I would say there's no way. There's no way that a PhD in some kind of esoteric thing is going to win over the hearts and minds of Pennsylvania. And I met this guy and, we just hit it off right away. This guy really wanted to understand the solutions I came up with and how they work, the intricacies, and how am I able to do all the things I do, and what does it mean to running the state of Pennsylvania? And we got into workforce stuff and other things. And he was back out of his own personal interest in the topic. He must have been back in the campaign trail 10 times. And I'm like, this is a bad way to spend your time. You got to reach out to the people. But he came up with a great idea. He really had the idea to be first, fund the campaign out of his own money. He would raise money and he could pay it back if he wanted to, and just come out first and dominate. And he did it. He had a good idea and he won. And so when he became governor, he was very fascinated by my workforce work. And so a whole separate line of work than the food desert thing is, how do you get people that have never worked before, often people with criminal records, abusive families with substance abuse? How do you get someone who's just traumatized and been through so much hardship? How do you get them to be a productive worker that's going to end up with a good income and a family sustaining situation? What's the path? Because government just doesn't have this right. And I actually talked to the Obamas about this too. And he's like, you're totally right, but we're undertaking enough of your stuff. The next guy's got to do the workforce stuff. So it was Wolf that wanted to do it. And he asked me to take over the workforce board. And it's the craziest system that was invented over time with compromise of Democrats and Republicans to patch together a system that's almost impossible to do anything good. And what happens is the federal government, through different programs with different rules, gives money to the state workforce board, hundreds of millions of dollars a year. And that board allocates the money to local workforce boards that have a separate board. And somehow that has to be combined with other social programs so you can have a one-stop center that's an impoverished person could go to and organize a plan for them to turn their lives around. But everything has different rules. So you really need everything to help someone, but no one qualifies for everything. And if I had to explain the complexity of this system, it's a waste of money the way it's currently designed. And these things, some of them were created like decades ago, like 80, 90, 100 years ago, that have rules from that time that have never changed because the Democrats and Republicans can't agree on how to change it. And so I thought, let me take a whack at it. And interestingly enough, each of these workforce boards has a business plan. And in our case, when I took over, it was a 450-page business plan of how they're going to use the federal dollars to accomplish this goal. And the first thing I noticed with the business plan is that there's sort of an unwritten rule. Actually, it's not unwritten, it's written, that your job with the government's money is to get people a good job. But that ends up bad. And I'll tell you why it ends up bad. Because let's say a good job would be $20 an hour. But a person who's never worked before, it's pretty hard to get them to a $20 an hour job, let's face it. So what the government does with that money is they get people that don't really need to help the job to hit their numbers because they have goals. In their business plan, they set out a goal. And so the whole goal system is incentivizing not the thing you want. And so one of the things I did was, can we break out of this system? Can we have two pots of money, and can one of the pots help really people that are in very bad circumstances? And can we throw out the minimum wage, so contrary to any politician running to office, and get people that no one give a chance and get them to give a chance? And that's what I focused on and built a team to try to make progress in that area.
Jeff, you talk about, and you and I spent a lot of time talking about this because this, kind of scared the bejesus out of me when you were telling me about how it works for you, is your formerly incarcerated program, because that's massive, right? You have 100?
Well, we have about 3,500 employees, and I want to say we have 800 formerly incarcerated folks. And it all started about 20 years ago. I'm opening a new store in West Philly. And one of the things that I learned to do is have a town hall meeting, which I don't think any CEOs that do town hall meetings with their customers. Like I haven't heard of that before. But I wasn't sure if you want to serve someone that you don't fully understand, how would you learn about them? There's not books on this really. And so I started doing these town hall meetings, and they kept on growing in size, bigger and bigger. And so the town hall meeting in Philadelphia probably had 800 citizens and leaders from that neighborhood. And they had seen me do these stores before. It was, I think, our 5th food desert store. And so they knew I knew the food part pretty good. And they're like, Jeff, we know you know this part. We want to go to something different. And a very well-informed lady from the neighborhood said, I don't know if you're aware of this, I want to educate you on something, and then we're going to have an ask of you. An incredibly large percentage of the people that live here have been incarcerated. And if you didn't know, when you're incarcerated, you pretty much can't get a job. So now I'm going to challenge your business model. How are you going to be a sustained success with people who can't work? You should fix that problem. And so after the meeting, I went to my team. The lady couldn't be more right. We're here together. We've agreed to be here together. This is a problem our customers have. Someone needs to show that this is possible. And it'll have long-term benefits for the community and for our own business. Like one day, if we're not in a poor neighborhood, I'm the smartest entrepreneur ever. And I would have helped a whole bunch of people doing it. And my people went nuts. They're like, you've lost your mind. This is a high crime area, and you're going to have the criminals actually working for us. And, you're insane. Like, the insurance company won't let you do it. Wakefern won't let you. I said, look, we're going to do this. I heard what you had to say. We're going to hire our first 6 people. You all can decide which 6 you want to place your bet on. Be as smart as you can about it. And they had all kinds of rules, which we later found out weren't necessary. And we hired 6, 5 of which are managers for me today.
Wow.
And what we learned, and the more time I spend with our formerly incarcerated employees, the more I realize they look a lot more like Bill and I than what you think. They're entrepreneurs that didn't have a dad to steer them to use their different personality, their different drive in a more productive way. They could stay home and get welfare, but they chose to do the business that they could do and ended up in jail. But that drive and that creativity, they're entrepreneurs with the wrong product. And we quickly learned that and realized their potential and ran with it. And we got smarter and smarter the more we did. And ultimately, someone who's very wealthy asked me, of all the things you do, what would be the most important in society? I'm like, this thing's a home run. He goes, I will fund you, start a nonprofit, and I will fund you to do it for society and in this region. And that's where Uplift came from, which my wife's the chairwoman today, but I was originally the chairperson and the one with the sort of strategy.
Yeah.
And we train CDL licensed truck drivers and HVA mechanics and food service workers. And, they're off adding all kinds of industries. And the tighter the workforce is, more companies are willing to give it a chance. And the success rate, now we're doing it 20 years in a nonprofit measuring results. We have a 2% recidivism rate.
Wow.
Meaning 98% of the people we train never go back to jail again or a life of crime.
That's amazing.
They're just successful. So this is where society just has it completely wrong.
And I think this is a perfect time to drink, after that beautiful presentation, Jeff's favorite wine, Lafitte Rothschild.
This is an awesome one.
Toasting. What an accomplishment, Jeff.
Thank you.
That's
proud of
really,
you for that.
really cool.
We didn't even talk anything about business yet.
I got questions to bring us back on track on that way, but
No, this is special.
the price point's a little different than Saddlehill.
Well, when Bill's paying, the price doesn't seem to be an object for me.
This is unbelievable, and good.
This is
choice
a great
with being
wine.
your favorite, Jeff.
How much is this in your?
No, we don't sell that. Not even into Bruno's.
Jeff, just on a personal note, I want to talk about a few things that I've known you to do, and this is not just you talking about all the stuff you do for communities. First of all, the history lesson of Philadelphia. We the store at 3rd and Oregon going way back, which is down in South Philly, not far from the stadium complexes. I have seen your store out in Lehigh, where Connie Mack Stadium, where the Phillies used to play, is, and you touch on all different neighborhoods through this region. But one of the things I was really proud to say you were my friend for, a guy named Rodney McLeod used to play for the Eagles. And Rodney and I did a radio show together a few years back. And Rodney was really into the community and helping, and won Man of the Year for the NFL and did a lot of really genuine good stuff and had a Change Our Future Foundation. And on election day of 2020, he organized all the Eagles to go out and take a bus around the town. And we stopped at all your ShopRites. That's what that was our stops along the way to try to encourage people to get out to vote. And I could just see how entrenched you were in the community and how much the people really looked to you, the ShopRites, as almost a center for them and a gathering spot. It was really an incredible compliment. I was very, very proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And so getting back to,
I really do. I'm jazzed up about my work I've done.
It's so genuine, and I just want you to know that I see it, and with not looking for any attention. I mean, you turned down an appointment from the president basically to make his wife look good. Just didn't need any help looking good. So it's so genuine. But on where we are government wise and your business, we have tariffs going on right now, and I imagine that has big impact on your costs and everything. So you want to talk a little bit about how that impacts you and maybe you see potentially the solutions and where we could go with it. So
there's two Trump administration strategies which are not good for what I do. And tariffs, especially, one of the businesses we own is the Bruno Brothers with a lot of imported products.
And we want to get into that sort of new, more recent venture for you.
So obviously, eventually tariffs are going to raise the price of goods. And if I had to pick one reason that Trump probably won is because the inflation that was experienced during the Biden administration really hurt the everyday American. And so it's odd that he has a strategy that's probably going to hurt him a little more. But the consumer, if I had to take you back to COVID time, from COVID to now, there has been unprecedented inflation in food for various reasons. And the system still just hasn't recovered it's not all COVID related, but it's bird flu. There's a lot of things that occurred that have kept some things very expensive. And so this is going to add to that problem. Now, the food business, there are people that know how this works. And so a lot of the people in the food business have gone way long, bring in product pre-tariff. And so you haven't seen them in prices to a big degree yet. You've seen it in coffee, chocolate, some seafood items. Meat's expensive, not really related to tariffs, related to a shortage of cows. And unlike wheat or chickens that grow quickly, cows take a couple of years to grow. And so when you misproject the cow herd, it's usually a 2-year recovery time. And so there's an influence of a lot of different things that have occurred. And tariffs, are concerning mainly because it's hurting our customers. And, we're the face to the customer, and they're upset because they're having trouble paying their bills. But the more damaging thing is SNAP. So if your life's not together and you don't make a living, chances are you apply for what used to be called food stamps, which is now SNAP, to help you feed your family. Because I think the idea in this country is even the worst off person should be able to feed their family. And that program really has been incredibly successful in many different ways. One is, and it's not spoke about a lot, but the rural communities grow the food. And so SNAP enhances the farmer's business, and they know it. And then there's a multiplier effect because it goes from the farmer to the distributor, some cases to processors and manufacturers. And when you take the economic impact, the end impact on the economy is many times what we spent in SNAP, which would mean if you take dollars away, the impact will be many times what you took away. And, there's been very few administrations, Republican or Democrat, that have cut the SNAP program. And so the current program's slated for a 30% cut. And the way most of the cut's going to occur is they don't want to be accused of taking food out of babies' mouths. So they had to come up with a way to make it more palatable. They've changed the definition of a child. So older children are not a reason not to work. So it used to be you could not work and take care of your kids until they're 18. And that's been brought to a much younger age. They're saying as soon as they legally could go to school, that you need to work. And you're talking about a population, most of which have never worked. They might not have graduated high school. They may have a criminal record. They're not really that employable. And as a chairman of the state workforce board, I'm telling you, it is difficult for them to be employed. And now that, the government's saying, we're going to let your kids starve to death if you don't find a job, which is really a tough call on that population. And for the people who serve them, it's a tough call. Yeah. Because in our inner city business, a lot of the stores could be 25% of the revenue is SNAP volume. But if you go to a store like Save-A-Lot, could be 50% of the revenue. And so the likely outcome of this over time is the exact opposite of what I've done. You're likely to see a contraction in stores, a contraction or consolidation in farming, a contraction in distributors. Like I said, it's a multiplier effect. And the economic impact is likely to exceed the cost savings of the program and a lot of human suffering.
Yeah. Hey, Jeff. So our families are close. You have an amazing wife. She works by your side. She runs parts of the business that you'd rather not even play around with, and she does a terrific job. You also have 4 great sons. You now have a couple grandchildren. Talk about, I want to get into each one of their personalities because we'll be here all night, and, they're like my kids too, but talk about all the challenges that come with a family business with, one of the kids in the business and your wife and pillow talk and all that kind of good stuff.
So in the backdrop of I waited for my dad to hear what happened in the store since I was a young boy, and our house was the same way. We talked groceries and business every single dinner. Everyone was debating and arguing and involved since young ages. And Sandy originally was in the consumer goods business. She ran like half the country sales force for Almay, cosmetic brand, but before that, Unilever. She worked for. So she's kind of a grocer in her own right. And we were meant for each other. And we have supported each other's goals. We have common goals to raise the kids, to build the business. And in a lot of ways, our goals superseded our own comfort and our own personal things that we would like to do. I mean, we have been dedicated to growing this business, helping people, and following a strategy that most people think is insane. And Sandy goes to all the stores, inner city stores, violent places, and she's right with me, hugging the customers and employees, and we're signed up for this together. And I don't think I would have been able to do it without Sandy, because most wives would be, why aren't you home at nights? Why aren't you home on the weekends? But in this case, we were out together doing it. Even in the early days, we used to leave some of the kids in our controller's office. Our office used to be in the upstairs of one of the stores, and they would rock the cribs while Sandy and I were working on the sales floor. So they grew up in the business, which caused three of them to go like, you're insane, we're not doing this. That was an education for them, but it all gave them a drive. They're all successful in their careers. And one of them's like, I love this, I want to do the same thing.
Josh is your CFO, and he's teaching you some things, isn't he? He's a really brilliant guy.
Josh, Ivy League guy, very, very good technical skills, coming from a different perspective than me, worked in private equity for his 2 jobs out of college, much different than me. And he's worked his way up to our CFO, and he's a part of our 4-person executive team. It's Sandy, myself, Josh, and the guy who's the president of our company, who's not a family member. And, we have some pretty rigorous debates. Josh taking a pretty conservative, typical finance role, saying, where's the return? Where's the payback? Look at the risk, and Sandy, like, look at the impact on the customers. And the president, who came from an ops background, how will I implement that? How can I make that work? And so it's pretty intense.
Yeah, especially, he's such an analytical guy, and you're like a typical entrepreneur. We use intuition, we use gut feel.
No, it's exactly.
And they can't get the gut feel on the spreadsheet,
no.
Right? And that's what kind of freaks them out. And Dad, you're really looking at this the wrong way. And, kind of been there.
Yeah, but what's interesting, though, because just my approach in general, even how I manage, I see my job is to help people do better, not to order them what to do, but I want people. Well, let me make this observation. Most people as leaders don't do as good as they could because they're doing their subordinates' work, because the subordinate can't do their work. And to me, the most opening strategy is get them to do their work, teach them to do their work, or replace them to get someone who can do their work. Because if everyone does their own work, it really opens you up for potential. So I'm servant leader. I really do try to help everyone do their job better, to achieve their goals better. And I have that approach, and I take an initial approach to see if I can't bridge all these different ideas and come up with some modification of what I want to do to make it work all the way around. And that's a debate going back and forth, more as a coach.
And a couple of years ago, Jeff, you woke up one day, it's probably 3 years by now, and said, I'm stepping down from the business. My family's going to run it. I'm going to run for mayor of Philadelphia. Explain.
Yeah, so I never had any interest in politics. And it was a tough 8 years prior to that point, where I thought a lot of the policies that the then mayor were pursuing were harmful to the people I serve. And I thought that business as usual in the political world, we were going to end up with someone else that was not going to help Philadelphia solve its problems. And so working so closely with people, I really had a vision that our problem in Philadelphia is that we allowed the number of people that live in poverty to grow out of control. Too many. And every year they cost more and more to help. And you have to raise taxes, and you keep on raising taxes, and it chases away our revenue, our businesses, and our wealthy citizens. And that the only fix to that is to help people work. And that was my experience. And I have a good track record of doing that. And so I thought, one is I'm used to operating a big complex thing anyway, like a city is. And from a strategy standpoint, I thought I could make a major dent in poverty that would have peace dividends if I were successful in doing it. And so I decided I wanted to do it. Of course, first I talked to Sandy, and her first thing is, you lost your mind. You're not doing that.
Jeff.
Yeah. And I said, all right, so I won't do it then if you're not behind it. She goes, well, I'm not going to hold you back if you want to do it. All right, you have one shot. Go do it. And so we promoted a guy to be president, Paul. And Sandy took sort of all the work I had at Wakefern. So Wakefern runs by committees. There's a board of directors, officers, there's all kinds of committees. And the whole portfolio of stuff Sandy took over, among other things. And my son Josh took over some stuff. So I basically divided my work in three, handed it out to everyone, and took off and ran. I think very good for developing them. Risky, but very good for developing them. And I thought they did real well, came out stronger for it. But then I don't win, and I'm back. And I didn't want to take anything away from them or stop their progress, and I didn't. But we set up this executive committee, and my approach is, what have you not been able to get done in the years I was gone? Give me a list. Each of you give me a list, and I'll just work on your list of things that you're having a hard time with and see if I can help you get some stuff done. And look, I'll be free to mention if I think something you're doing is holding your progress back. Like you're going to do the same thing with me. And, I'm not going to have a position, I'm just going to help, and let's see how it goes. And I had about 100 items over the 2 years that couldn't get done. And I put them down on a spreadsheet like I do. And I started, taking a shot at it. I think I got 2-3 years later, I think I got 99 out of the 100 done. And one I just couldn't get done. Maybe I shouldn't have got it done. All right, so I gave up on that one. And so getting that list done, I'm like, all right, what am I uniquely good at that I could be helpful to our family's progress? Like, it's not about me anymore. I don't need any newspaper articles or any attention. I've had more than enough attention in my life, especially with the political campaign. But, what can I do uniquely to help our family business that probably won't get done if I don't do it? And so I ended up, responsible for M&A, real estate, and strategic partnerships. Things that take a lot more time to do, that the operators are bogged down in operation and would tend not to give those things enough time. And I said, to help you, I'm going to work independently, meaning I'm going to do the initial due diligence on my own. I'll negotiate everything on my own. I'll do it without lawyers. I'll do it without finance people because I've done all this stuff before. And I'll hand you a fully fleshed out LOI executed, and then I'll turn it over to Josh to get the agreement of sale and to do all the legal, and Paul to handle the HR and ops and all that stuff. And, the Brunos was the first deal.
Yeah.
Josh asked to be involved early, as I guess to show what he could do, but also learn. And they were really bogged down after the Brunos. And
But just hang on, because the Brunos is really well known in this region. For anybody not watching, just tell who the Brunos is.
Yeah, but wait a minute. And it's also, he's going to say, but he has two businesses. The ShopRite side, the fresh grocer side is kind of in the middle. Then you got upscale, super upscale, right?
Yeah, some of my ShopRites serve the poorest people in the country. And some of my DeBrunos serve the wealthiest people in the country. And there is a common thread between that both the poorest and the wealthiest need someone to pay closer attention to their needs because they're different. They're not homogeneous. And what you find in an average American grocery store, it's the same everywhere. And so I thought that this sort of niche work where the shoppers need much closer attention and much more creativity would fit into what we do. Of course, it's been harder than we thought because we have an incredible team designed to do what they do. And this is a completely different thing.
Different business.
But we're working our way through it and learning it.
So with that, I think it's wind down time. Is today Wednesday? Wind down Wednesday.
I like that.
So this is one of my favorites. I've owned this wine for, it's a 2008. And I'm pretty sure I bought it in about 2010 when it was first released. Dominus, it's a Napa wine with a very Bordeaux style. So,
we love Napa wines, especially Bordeaux style.
The winemaker Christian Mule.
Yeah, it's very good.
Really good.
That's silky, right?
And you could see the stylistic similarity to your wine.
Right?
You see what he likes. And then he was able to capture that. Hey, Jeff, before we get off completely the political, Bill and I actually, our friendship really bonded when I made a foolish run in the mid-90s for mayor of Cherry Hill. Now, not the same thing as mayor of Philadelphia. And Bill was very, very supportive and very, very helpful. I was extremely naive, even in what is a relatively small town compared to what you took on to the whole process. You know, you took on a monster task. Now, it's a shame how the politics of it all works that you really didn't get a chance to serve. But besides, I want to test you first. Please spell Eagles for us.
Please what?
Eagles.
All right.
No, I'm not giving you that test. And I'm not knocking the current mayor.
I like the current mayor.
And
we got along in the campaign trail. And if you lined up our thinking and policies, we're not that dissimilar.
She's a fabulous lady. And she's really a great improvement over her predecessor. We don't even need to name, but it was somebody who didn't even want to be mayor of Philadelphia anymore. A great, great city. And he had no enthusiasm, didn't care about the people the way you do. But talk about the process for a second. And because people like you generally don't throw themselves into that. You're a successful businessman, you've got your family, but you're the kind of person who should be in it. So talk about the process and how we can get better people in government, because I'm really, forgetting which side of the aisle you're on, I'm really bothered by the fact that our political system is broken, that whatever side you're elected by, you stay on those party lines, whether you agree or not, whether it's good for people or not. What can we change? What would you see having had that experience at running for mayor of one of the biggest cities in America?
Well, it's a brutal system. And I think one of my critiques of what we could do differently is your opponent can lie about you, and there's no accountability to that. And I don't understand that, because in the private world, if someone were to do a video saying you did something you didn't do, you'd sue them and win. And in the political world, that's not how it works. And, you know, in my case, I had that happen. Matter of fact, if I could tell you a quick story about this, a smart campaign, the first thing you do is you do oppo research on yourself to see if there's things in the closet, you know, that are going to be showstoppers. And Sandy and I, we've been working. Like, we didn't have time to do anything wrong. We've been helping people and working. And so I had extremely clean oppo research. And the guy who did the research, they produced like a 75-page book on every decision you ever made, everything you ever did. It's very thorough. And he goes, despite how clean this is, which I have to say is the cleanest I've ever done, it's not going to matter. They're going to make it all up. And there's nothing you could do about it. And these are the things they're going to lie and say about you that aren't true, but it's hard to defend because it's a complicated story and everything costs money to advertise, and you're not going to choose to defend yourself because you're not going to be able to spend the money to defend yourself.
Or it gets you totally distracted as to what you're
from doing the job. And so that did happen. And
by the way, it happened to us, if you recall. And just running for mayor of Cherry Hill, they created a scandal about me because when I was in college at Rutgers, I still voted out of my parents' house in Cherry Hill, which is totally legitimate, but they made it sound like I committed voter fraud. That's just running for mayor of Cherry Hill. Do you remember that? There ran headlines about this. So running a big-time mayor position, I can only imagine what you had to deal with.
It was incredible, and it was incredible. The people who are running for office, some of them are not this way, but some of them will go to lengths that really expose a character flaw that's so substantial, like they shouldn't be involved in anything with that kind of character. And the field attracts those kind of people. Those kind of people win because it works. It works doing nasty stuff. Yeah. The good part, though, there is a good part of it. You get to have a debate and bring up ideas. There are a lot of ideas, some of which the current mayor is trying to execute. And you get to meet people you never would have a chance to meet. In Philadelphia, I was in every neighborhood. I met people, as much as I'm a community person, I met people in communities and immigrants and different populations that I thought were incredibly fascinating. And the second thought is, if I'm not mayor, I'd like to serve them and have a grocery store to serve them, which one of the acquisitions we recently did, I did do that.
Well, Jeff, being a close friend, I'm not letting you run from any political office ever again. But
Sandy told me no more.
No way. But let's talk about what's next, because you're still, relatively young guy, and You got a lot of energy, and
You got a lot of
you don't have any. You're not like your grandkids are your passion, but you don't play golf, so you are all about business. Matter of fact, I think you and I have spent some time. You're just saying, what kind of deals you got in the pipeline? I go, Jeff, I'm done. I'm just a poor old farmer trying to make a living. What's next, Jeff?
Yeah, so I think it starts out with my 4 sons. We're looking at other family businesses and how things could go awry and different choices the parents make and how that manifests itself in having productive citizens that are successful or welfare kids that are spoiled and just a drain on society. And Sandy and I were very purposeful, and we would have meetings with our children to explain our estate planning, explain our business holdings, go over how everything does. So they're very well informed. Of course, 3 of them decided they didn't want to do it. 1 decided they did. But they have given us a lot of good food for thought. And they're like, you have all your life's work tied up in, really, we're in 2 businesses. We have grocery stores and we own the real estate in a lot of the grocery stores. And there's no diversification. And I don't know anyone that thinks that that's a prudent thing. That's a legitimate complaint. And so we have started to change. And so I am spending more time to look at, deals I might want to be involved in. I could leverage my skills, private equity type deals. We have focused more on the real estate. That's a way to diversify. And so I'm doing some of that. The other thing is we've built enough critical mass of grocery stores in Philadelphia where we're really very dominant in the city of Philadelphia. ShopRite by far is the most dominant, and I have most of the ShopRites. We have a tremendous advantage because our overhead per store is probably the least among all grocers in Philadelphia. And so I could buy out a 1, 2, 3 store guy and just on the overhead savings, make a successful
Tremendous
operation.
synergies. Yeah.
And the scale of our operation also provides services to the stores in the communities you can't do as a smaller operation. So we're in a consolidating business that's very hard. Our advantage is real, and I think we're going to continue growing.
Yeah, that's amazing.
In Philadelphia.
And that's good for Philadelphia, Jeff.
I think so.
We're very, very proud of you as your
love
friend
you, Jeff.
and to watch.
And we're proud of what you've done in Philadelphia. You make it super special. I've been in your stores. It's just the coolest thing how you're walking around with all your stores and all your success, and you're hugging the customers and you're talking to the customers. And it's like a big old school entrepreneur.
And the other part is, of all the things we talk about, because it's, the wine part's great and some really great wines today, but business and life, and you combine it all so well in the business and the life part of family. And it's a 4th generation, now 5th generation going on, how you've raised 4 great kids and somehow they all got great work ethic. Even, that's something we also always talk about. What you said about your wife might be the biggest compliment I've ever heard anybody give their wife. We were made for each other. And she's your partner, your teammate, and it's just wonderful. Yeah, I know how genuine you are. Wish you could have been our mayor, but glad you're around, still servicing our region and our area, and we're certainly.
Yeah, you're not our mayor, but you're still a very great friend, and proud you're here, buddy.
Thank you. You guys are the best. I appreciate your sentiment.
And we appreciate everybody for listening. On behalf of Bill Green, the proprietor of Saddlehill, my partner here in the show, and Jeff Brown, our wonderful guest and just an incredible person and entrepreneur himself and a great part of our community. I'm Jerrold Colton saying thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time on Uncorked.
Cheers.